Until 3 weeks ago, my life was normal, quiet, predictable, full of small joys and the kind of routine that makes you feel like you're in control. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I spend most of my time looking after my son, Nicholas, while my wife, Noriko, works long hours at a financial firm in Manhattan. Our world wasn't perfect, but it was safe. And then something changed. Something small. Something that should have been harmless. By the way, if you like these kinds of stories, dark and strange and creeping under your skin, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Clara After Dark. I'm always curious to know when and where you're listening. Midnight, morning commute? Tell me in the comments, and let's dive deeper into the dark together. It started the day Nicholas pulled a black plastic toy out of his backpack. I thought it was a Tamagotchi at first. Remember those? A little digital pet that beeped when it was hungry or made pretend poop you had to clean up. This one looked similar, but something about it felt off. The casing was pitch black and glossy, like obsidian. The screen didn't show much of anything. No cute creature bouncing around, just faint gray pixels flickering like static, only visible when the light hit it right. Nicholas called it his tether pet and became obsessed with it almost instantly. We had no idea where it came from. He said a friend gave it to him at school. We figured it was some knockoff from Chinatown, or maybe something his teacher confiscated and never returned, but he carried it everywhere. He even whispered to it sometimes. I brushed it off. Kids get weirdly attached to toys, but this felt different, like the toy was watching us back. That weekend, we visited Noriko's mother, Aki, at Mount Sinai in Queens. She's been battling bone cancer for over a year. The visits have gotten harder. She's weaker now, can barely sit up in bed. Still, when Nicholas entered the room, her eyes lit up. For a moment, it felt like nothing was wrong. Clara came with us that day to our neighbor and one of Noriko's closest friends. Clara always had a way of making the air feel lighter, even in heavy places. Nicholas clung to his tether pet the entire visit. When Clara asked about it, he stiffened. It's not a toy, he said quietly. Her name is Baba. She gets hungry if I don't feed her. Did you name her that? Clara asked gently. No, that's just her name. It was already there. We all exchanged glances. Aki, lying in her hospital bed, smiled faintly and said, I gave that to him. The doctors gave it to me, and I passed it along. None of us had seen Aki leave the hospital in weeks. We didn't press her. Maybe she was confused. Maybe not. We left the hospital unsettled. That night, Nicholas slept with the tether pet clutched in his hands. I walked past his room and heard him whispering to it in the dark. I paused. Just outside his door, I could make out one of the words he said. Please, don't take Grandma yet. I felt the air go cold. I should have taken it from him then, but I didn't, and that was my first mistake. Clara didn't say much on the drive home. She just kept glancing at me in the rear view mirror like she was trying to figure something out. Maybe she was. I didn't ask. I was too busy watching Kenji in the back seat. He hadn't spoken a word since we left the hospital. He just sat there quietly, cradling that little black Tamagotchi like it was a wounded bird. The screen was still blank. No pixelated creature, no beeping sounds, just a soft, low hum that I was sure wasn't there before. I thought maybe the batteries were dying, or maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I wanted to imagine things. Back at our apartment, I tried to take it from him, just for a moment, just to check it. But his grip tightened like it was fused to his hand. I froze. His eyes snapped up at me. They weren't angry. They weren't sad. They were empty. I let go. I think it wants to stay with me, he whispered. Those words, They hit me in the chest like ice water. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't want to know. Clara stayed the night, said she was worried about both of us. She tried to act casual, watching a movie in the living room, eating popcorn, but every so often, she'd lean just enough to peek down the hall toward Kenji's room, like she was waiting for something, or listening. Around 2 a.m., the sound started again. That same static, louder this time, coming from Kenji's room. Clara and I both stood at the same time. No discussion, just instinct. The hallway felt wrong, like it had grown longer, or darker. We reached his door, and Clara placed a hand on the knob. She looked at me once before opening it. Kenji was sitting up in bed, eyes wide open. The Tamagotchi glowed with a pale green light, but it wasn't the screen that chilled me. It was the thing standing in the corner. Not a shadow, not a dream. Something small, thin. Its skin looked like plastic, smooth and shiny, with little pixelated eyes that blinked one frame at a time. It was watching him. No, not watching, mirroring. Every time Kenji tilted his head, it did the same, like a reflection lagging half a second behind. And the noise. The static wasn't coming from the toy anymore. It was breathing, ragged, wet, mechanical. Clara stepped forward. I grabbed her arm. She turned and whispered, "Do you see it too?" I nodded. Then, without warning, Kenji spoke in a voice that wasn't his. It was deeper, slower. "It's not finished learning." Clara pulled me out of the room and shut the door. The lock clicked, even though I was sure his door didn't have a lock. We sat in silence, hearts pounding, breath shallow. Eventually, the static stopped. The light faded. We didn't sleep, just sat there, waiting for morning, hoping that the sun would make sense of everything. It didn't. The next morning, Kenji was back to normal, or at least he pretended to be. He came out of his room, dressed and humming a song I didn't recognize, the Tamagotchi still in his hand, though now it looked different. The screen had color, real color, not just the grayscale pixel art you'd expect. It shimmered like a tiny window into something else. "Mom," he said, "it has a name now." It told me. Clara and I exchanged a glance. "What's its name, sweetheart?" I asked, keeping my tone soft. Kenji smiled. "Nate's." Clara stiffened. The name meant nothing to me, but I could see something in her face shift, like she recognized it but didn't want to admit it. "You hungry, baby?" I asked quickly, trying to change the subject. He nodded and walked to the kitchen, still cradling the toy. Clara leaned toward me and whispered, "That word, it's not a name. It's a Sumerian phrase. Roughly translates to, 'not of this garden.' It's from a text I read during a case a few years ago. Some fringe group thought it referred to a type of entity that exists outside what they called the Garden of Earth." I stared at her. "You think this is some cult nonsense?" "I hope it is," she muttered. Kenji was laughing now. Not the light, childish giggle I loved, but something low and rhythmic. We peeked around the corner. He was talking to the Tamagotchi. No, arguing with it. "You promised," he said. "You said I could show her." The screen flickered rapidly, faster than a normal LCD should. The humming sound came back, deeper and louder this time. I stepped forward. "Kenji, who are you talking to?" He stopped and looked up at me with wide, hurt eyes. "I was trying to tell Nate Sarah about you, Mommy, but it says you're not ready." That night, Clara didn't go home. She made up a story about a busted lock on her front door, but we both knew she wasn't leaving me alone in that apartment. Not after what we'd seen. She stayed on the couch, and I kept the baby monitor on, even though Kenji hadn't needed it in years. Around 1:30 a.m., the static came back. I sat up in bed, Clara was already standing in the hallway, eyes locked on Kenji's door. The light under it pulsed like something breathing. We approached slowly. I reached out to knock, but before I could, the door opened on its own. Inside, Kenji sat cross-legged in the center of the room. He had drawn symbols on the floor. I didn't recognize any of them, but Clara did. She swore and ran to him, knocking the toy out of his hand. It landed hard and sparked. The room shook, not violently, but like the building itself had hiccuped. Kenji screamed, not in pain, but in loss. He lunged for the Tamagotchi, but Clara grabbed him. I scooped up the toy and held it away from him. The screen was dark now, dead, but something in the weight felt off. Like it had gotten heavier. Clara whispered, "We need to leave tonight." I didn't argue. We packed in silence. I thought maybe, if we left the apartment, this would all end, that this thing, whatever it was, wouldn't follow. But as we drove off into the night, I glanced at Kenji in the rearview mirror. He wasn't crying, he was smiling, and in his lap, the Tamagotchi screen flickered back on. This time, there were two creatures. The next morning, I woke to an eerie silence. The house felt different, heavier somehow, as if something unseen was lurking just beyond the edge of sight. I found my son in the kitchen, eyes glazed over, clutching the Tamagotchi like a lifeline. "Mom, it's alive," he whispered, voice trembling. "It talks to me." I wanted to dismiss it as imagination, but the fear in his eyes was real. I called Clara, desperate for guidance. "You have to stop it," she urged. "This isn't just a game. It's a doorway." We agreed to meet that evening, armed with knowledge from old texts Clara had found. As night fell, the weight of the unseen grew stronger. I wondered, how deep did this nightmare go? And could we escape it before it consumed us all? That evening, Clara arrived with a small box filled with talismans and old relics. Relics, she said, could sever the connection between our world and the one feeding off the Tamagotchi. My son sat quietly, the device still clutched in his hands like it was a part of him. Clara began the ritual, chanting softly while drawing symbols in the air. Suddenly, the room temperature dropped, and shadows danced unnaturally on the walls. The Tamagotchi beeped frantically, its screen flashing images too twisted to comprehend. My son screamed as if invisible claws were tearing at his skin, but Clara stayed firm, repeating the incantation. Minutes felt like hours, but finally, the device went silent. It screamed black. The heavy atmosphere lifted. My son collapsed into my arms, shaking but alive. "It's over," Clara said, though I wasn't so sure. Some things, once opened, don't close so easily. Days passed, and life seemed to return to normal. My son smiled again, played outside, and the eerie presence that once haunted our home seemed to vanish. But sometimes, late at night, I caught him staring at the dark corner of his room, the same corner where the Tamagotchi used to glow. One night, I heard a soft beep. I rushed in, only to find the Tamagotchi's broken shell lying on the floor. Its screen cracked, but still faintly glowing. Panic surged through me. How could this be? Clara warned me that some objects carry a curse beyond repair. The spirit attached to the Tamagotchi might have been weakened but not destroyed. I realized the fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. Clara stayed on the phone with me as I crept through the quiet house, holding my breath like it might help me hear better. I reached my son's room first. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear the soft worry sound again, like a tiny motor or something. Breathing. "Clara, I'm at his door," I whispered. "Okay, don't go in all the way yet. Just take a look." I nudged the door open a bit more and peeked inside. At first, everything looked normal. The bed sheets were tossed aside, as if he'd just gotten out of bed in a hurry. But then I saw it. On the floor near his nightstand, the Tamagotchi. It was glowing. Not the normal pixel screen kind of glow either, but something deeper, pulsing and alive. I slowly stepped into the room, phone trembling in my hand, and crouched down to look at it. The screen flickered like an old CRT monitor, showing images that shouldn't even be possible on a 90s virtual pet. I saw our house. I saw my son. I saw myself. And then I saw Clara. Clara, I whispered, it's showing you, your face, in my son's Tamagotchi. There was a long pause. What am I doing in it? She asked, voice low. You're in the backyard. You're standing completely still. You're looking right at the house. That's when I heard the creak behind me. I turned slowly. There was nothing in the doorway, but the hallway was darker than it had been before, almost like the shadows themselves had thickened, gaining weight and shape. My phone screen dimmed suddenly, like the battery had been drained in a second, and Clara's voice crackled with static. Get out, she said. I stood, grabbing the Tamagotchi and tucking it into my hoodie pocket, then rushed past the darkened hallway toward my bedroom, hoping to check the backyard from the window. That's when I saw them. Footprints, tiny wet footprints, leading from the hallway to the stairs. Not muddy, not bloody, just damp, like they'd been walking through dew. Covered grass in the middle of the night. Clara, I think someone's inside. The call dropped. I was alone again. Or maybe I never was alone. Not with this thing in my pocket. And not with those footsteps already halfway down the stairs. I walked down the stairs holding my breath. Wet footprints were scattered across the wooden floor. They led toward the living room. I stepped carefully, calling my son's name. No answer, no sound at all. It was like the entire house had stopped breathing. The TV was off. The wall clock had frozen. Even the fridge had gone silent. The whole place felt like a sealed tomb. When I entered the living room, I saw him. My son, sitting on the floor, his back turned toward me. In his hand was the Tamagotchi, but I still had the real one. I could feel its shape in my hoodie pocket, and yet there it was. Same color, same scratches, same key. Sweetheart, I called out with a hoarse voice. He didn't reply. He didn't move. I stepped closer, the floor groaning beneath me. He turned to look at me, and I nearly collapsed. His face was blank, smooth skin where his eyes should have been. No sockets, no lids, just a flat stretch of flesh. But I could feel him looking right at me, staring into my thoughts. He raised the Tamagotchi toward me. His voice came out in a whisper. He's here now. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Clara again, I answered, hands trembling, and put it on speaker. Clara, I see him, but that's not my son. His eyes, they're just gone, not injured, never there. I know, she said quickly. I saw it too, through the house cameras. That place isn't yours anymore. The thing inside wants you to choose. Choose what, real or fake, now or then, life or something else. The boy started to twitch. His neck snapped sideways like a puppet yanked too hard. Then he laughed. A dry, broken laugh, like it came from a throat with no lungs. I'm hungry, he said. The Tamagotchi in my hoodie began to shake violently. I pulled it out. The screen was glowing. There was a countdown. 1 minute. What happens when it hits 0? Clara, destroy it now. What if my son is trapped inside? Clara paused, then answered in a low voice. If he's really in there, he's calling from the other side, not through that thing. 40 seconds. The creature stood, then leaped toward me screaming. I shouted and threw the Tamagotchi into the fireplace. It hit the bricks and shattered. the screen cracked. A burst of sparks shot out. The creature froze. Its body trembled, then collapsed to the ground like a wet sack. My son's clothes fell in a heap. No body, just black dust spilling across the floor. The countdown vanished. Sound returned. Lights flickered on. The fridge hummed. The clock ticked again, but my son was still missing, and I knew this wasn't over. I sat in the silence of the aftermath, staring at the pile of clothes where my son used to be. The black dust had stopped moving, but I could still feel it, watching me, breathing without lungs, waiting. My phone was still in my hand. Clara was still on the line. "Talk to me," I whispered. "Are you safe?" she asked. Her voice was strained, distant. "No, I don't think I ever will be again." There was a pause. Then Clara said something that made my stomach twist. "You need to check the other rooms. All of them, especially your son's closet." I didn't want to. Every part of my body screamed to run, but I couldn't leave him. Not if there was even a sliver of hope. I walked back up the stairs, each step heavier than the last. The hallway was colder now. The walls looked stretched, warped, like the house was exhaling slowly through the cracks. When I reached his bedroom, the door was already open. The Tamagotchi's beeping had stopped. In its place was something else, a soft scratching coming from inside the closet. I approached it, each step careful and deliberate. My hand reached for the knob. It was ice cold. I turned it. The door opened on its own. Inside was pitch black, but I saw movement. Then I heard a voice. "Daddy," it was my son. No static, no distortion. Just him, just his voice. "Help me." I stepped inside the closet. The floor didn't creak. The space felt too deep, too wide, like I had entered another place entirely. Behind me, the door slammed shut. Clara's voice came through the phone again. "If you're in, you don't have long. It feeds on doubt. You have to trust what's real." "What is real?" I asked. "The thing that hurts to remember? That's how you know." I moved forward. The walls around me were pulsing, breathing. I saw flashes of my son, smiling, crying, drowning in static, reaching for me. Then I saw something else. A second version of me, standing at the end of the tunnel, holding hands with my son, laughing, whole. "Come with us," he said. "We're safe here." It felt warm, so real. My legs almost moved on their own, but Clara shouted through the phone again, "That's not your memory. That's its bait." I gritted my teeth and turned away. The warm light behind me flickered, then screamed. My son's real voice called out from deeper in the dark. I followed it. I had no choice. Clara and I were the only ones left standing in that cursed house. The floor beneath us cracked like something alive was stirring just beneath the wood. We knew we could not stay any longer. The Tamagotchi glowed bright red in my pocket, pulsing like a heartbeat, feeding off our fear and something more. We ran, not out the front door, but toward the basement. Something told us the answers were down there. The house screamed as we descended the stairs, not with sound but with pressure, like a vice around the skull. Clara nearly collapsed, but I held her hand. We could not stop now. The basement was pitch black. The moment our feet hit the concrete, the Tamagotchi let out a long, flat tone like a monitor going dead. Then the screen blinked, and there he was, my son, staring out through that tiny pixelated screen. His face no longer a cartoon, but a grainy shadow of what he used to be. He was crying, but not for help. He was angry, betrayed, as if I had locked him in there on purpose. Clara whispered something to him. I could not hear the words, but the device in my hand started to heat up. Red light filled the room. Shapes emerged from the shadows. Children, pale and distorted, each holding their own Tamagotchi. They were not alive, but they were not dead either, frozen in a loop. Victims of something older than toys and pixels, older than our understanding of time. The house was not a house. It was a vessel, a trap. And I had brought the key. The Tamagotchi pulsed again. And I understood, if I wanted my son back, I had to stay. One soul for another. It whispered to me in static and clicks. But Clara had other plans. She yanked the device from my hand, screamed at me to run. I hesitated. The basement was warping around us, the children closing in, but Clara looked at me and smiled. A sad, knowing smile, like she had always been part of this. She pressed a button on the Tamagotchi, and everything exploded in light. I woke up outside. The house was gone. Only the burnt outline of its foundation remained, and the Tamagotchi was cold and silent in my hand. I never saw Clara again, but sometimes, when the night is too quiet, and the wind is just right, I hear that faint electronic chirp, and the pixelated face of my son, smiling, waiting, forever trapped in a toy, forever not alone. If this story gave you chills, help us keep the darkness alive by liking this video. Leave a comment with your thoughts or your own paranormal experiences. Share this story with someone who used to own a Tamagotchi. And do not forget to subscribe to Clara After Dark, because the night is always watching, and we will be waiting for you in the next nightmare.